Now, please meet Ali Garfinkel, Senior Finance Reporter at Fortune and the writer of everyone's favorite newsletter, The Term Sheet. She will be moderating a panel titled Finding the Diamonds in the Rough: Where are the billion-dollar investment opportunities leveraging visual technologies and AI? Nice to see you, Ali. Take it away.
Hi, everybody. So I'm so excited to be here with you all, and I'm really excited to be here with a group of stellar investors. If you folks could come on the screen, that would be lovely, and introduce yourselves.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Baker-Spone. I'm a general partner here at BAM Cornerpoint and was formerly a general partner at CRV at Charles River Ventures. Prior to that, built a couple of companies at the intersection of healthcare and technology and have invested in a number of computer vision and AI companies in the space. Excited to be here today.
How about you, Annie? I just saw you directly next.
Hey there. Hi, Allie. Hey, guys. I'm Annie Case, a partner at Kleiner Perkins. I lead a lot of our work in healthcare and consumer and vertical software with applied AI. And prior to KP, I've been here about 6 years, but prior to Kleiner, I was at Uber for several years as well.
And Karthik.
Hey, everyone. I'm Karthik Ramakrishnan, partner here at IBP. We're a multi-stage fund investing from Series A all the way up to pre-IPO. Typically leading rounds. I've been at the firm for 6 years now and focused mostly on application layer software, both vertical and horizontal, as well as consumer technology. And we've done a lot in AI at IBP, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
So I guess the place to start, we have nothing to talk about here, of course, obviously. But I think the place to start is pretty broad, and then we'll narrow in. If you had to sort of distill it down, what is the state of AI investing right now from your vantage point?
Where to even begin? What is the state of AI investing? I mean,
Give your vibe check, Annie. Just a
vibe check. Vibes are strong. Vibes are very, very strong. I would say quickly it has felt as though AI investing has moved from talking about it as an AI investment to just talking about it as an investment. Like the vast majority of our pipeline and companies that we're talking about, as a partnership when we get together, are fundamentally AI companies today. Whereas, 2 years ago, you would invest in a company that was building with AI, but it was, not like every company. And so I think now it's more like foundational and kind of table stakes to have some sort of AI story, if not like fully AI native company. And so quickly it feels like investing in AI is just investing in venture these days. But I don't know if Karthik or Kristen have other thoughts on that.
I agree, Annie. I remember the days when, we used to say, oh, things were, mobile banking was its own sector. And now it's just the way that you do finance happens to be multimodal and mobile and online, and as well as in person. And the way that we think about just the tectonic shift around AI is permeating so many different areas. I mean, the first AI investment I made was back in 2018 when the FDA cleared a path for AI diagnostics in healthcare imaging. But the level of different use cases and how quickly it has permeated so many different types of companies, both from the product side as well as the way companies work internally. I think that's a speed and a transformation that I haven't seen this pace, even with prior shifts, whether it's mobile or cloud, and really exciting, creating so much opportunity. But it's also a lot of hard to find the signal in the noise as well.
Find a diamond in the rough, so to speak. Karthik, what about you?
Exactly, Alec.
I agree with a lot of what was said. Now that it's been a couple of years since people have had time to build some of these products, like I think it's just so exciting because we're now seeing real use cases in production, and it's not like these new products, these new experiences are 10 to 20% better than the norm in some of these markets. They're like 2x better, they're 3x better from user experience, like ROI, both cost savings and revenue generating. So like it just is really exciting to see like such tangible applications that really actually work. And then I'll add maybe one flip side to that. It is a super frothy environment. In some ways, like our internal benchmarks are breaking. Like we've been around for a long time, so we have data on thousands of companies over the years. And so we sort of know what's 50th percentile, 75th percentile, 90th percentile growth. And more and more companies now are 99th percentile growth because of AI. And the growth rates are just so much faster. And more companies are doing it. The big question is like, how durable is the growth? How experimental is the revenue? How real are the budgets? And so, like, Kristen said, the signal from the noise, that part of it has gone a lot more difficult as well. So mostly pluses and some questions.
You touch on something, Karthik, that is one of the things that I find most interesting about this, which is how do you sort of discern when something is a small marginal improvement as opposed to something that existed before, as opposed to something that could be a major change. I'd actually want to throw that, as we sort of dig into this problem of finding the signal and the noise, the diamonds in the rough, I'd actually like to throw that question at all of you. How do you discern when something is marginally better versus possibly world changing?
Maybe I could start.
Yeah, go. You're right there.
Yeah. And if you, I mean, we almost always invest sort of post product market fit, so after companies have launched, which in some ways makes my job easier. But I'm customer obsessed. Like I think so. We do a ton of customer feedback, customer work when we're seriously evaluating any startup or founder. And so it's great because customers are unbiased. They give us their real perspective on how they're using the product. And so when you talk to like 5, 10, 20 customers of a product, I think you can quickly understand what's a true step change product versus what's a more marginal product in the way that they talk about ROI, in the way that they've actually implemented the product. Like, you like, what is the switching cost of a product, right? Like, does it take 2 or 3 days to rip things out if something new and shiny comes along? Or have they integrated a product so deep into their stack and so deep into their internal processes that like it would be a total nightmare to replace something? Like, I think that's where you really find what's really working. And then the cool thing with AI now is that most software products, I'd say I'm painting with a broad brush, but most software products are cost saving or efficiency savings. But some of the best AI tools, some of which we've had the privilege to invest in, are also like massively revenue generating for customers. And so like that's a different paradigm shift, right? Like that just implies the willingness to pay. The actual durability is so much stronger than what it was before. And so like we're seeing real unlocks. And so that's honestly what we're looking for. There's obviously the numbers and the financials and those matter a lot, but really the voice of the customer is, I think, like a North Star.
Is it one follow-up there? And Annie and Kristen, you're not gonna get away from this one. Is it fair to say then that the customer voice, as important as it has always been, is actually maybe even more important now? How do you sort of change? How do you sort of test that meaning? Does that make sense?
Sure, happy to jump in. It does, and I think that when you think about the customer voice, when you think about consumer, it's pretty straightforward, right? The consumer is the customer. When you think about enterprise, you actually end up with a number of different key stakeholders that represent the customer voice. And when you think about healthcare, it can even get a little bit more complicated from that. And so what I encourage, especially when I'm working with entrepreneurs in the early days, is they think about finding product market fit or aligning product market fit. It's really aligning the product use case and the value that you're delivering to those stakeholders. The stakeholders I put in 4 buckets just to make it easy. Who decides, who uses, who pays for, and who benefits from. And the tighter alignment that you have with your go-to-market strategy, with your product, and with the business value you're delivering, the steeper that adoption curve can be.
What about for you, Annie?
Yeah, I mean, as you both were talking, I was just thinking the question around like marginal versus step change. I feel like what's been fascinating recently is seeing so many examples where it's just so obvious that it like smacks you in the face. Where, a few years ago, you might see something where, oh, we think we can do this 10% faster, or 10% cheaper, or what have you. And now I feel like we're meeting companies fairly often that are, taking an example in healthcare where it's, you used to have a nurse who was focused on utilization management and processing these complex forms who could do, 5 of those in a day. And that was like kind of steady state, the expectation. And leveraging some of these new tools, suddenly it's 10 a day or 15 a day. And that data just kind of smacks you in the face to say, wow, that's not both the throughput that you're able to to manage just goes way, way up in a way that is hard to ignore. I think the bigger question on some of those use cases is not just, oh, this is clearly a step change improvement, not a marginal improvement, but instead, everyone is seeing the same step change improvement at the same time. Or, why will this team today we're seeing similar results, which is the team to bet on in these areas where it feels like obvious opportunity to improve dramatically and already seeing early data that it's working. A lot of people have caught on to these same use cases. So it's more a question about, in a world where everyone's seeing that step change improvement, like what is the real winner going to look like?
Yeah, where's the differentiation and defensibility? Exactly.
Yeah, I was gonna say more about that because you were nodding vigorously throughout that, Kristen.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree with Annie in terms of, one of the things that's particularly challenging to tell is, if it's hard to tell the difference between certain products and they're all seeing this type of growth and efficiency and business value, okay, where is the kind of long-term or at least medium-term differentiation between them going to come from? And that you can see a little bit earlier. But the harder part is, how do you think about the long-term defensibility? And we're investing for companies that are going to take 5, 7, 10 more years to achieve their goals and to deliver on their broader value and their broader vision. And so that long-term defensibility is incredibly important. So 2 areas I tend to look for and really dig in on are, one, just how embedded into the workflow does that particular product or application become? And then the second, is there any, whether it's proprietary data or a virtuous cycle around data that's going to lead to continuous improvement and the broader network effects of that product to deliver defensibility. And sometimes it's really hard in the early days to tell.
What about the founding team? Something Luciana was talking about earlier was the sort of importance of a founding team as one of the only consistent through lines across successful companies. What does a good founding team look like right now for all of you? What does the best founding team look like is maybe actually a better question.
I would say, I don't think the core traits of what we look for in founders around, grit and ambition and vision and ability to hire an exceptional team. Like, I don't think the foundational elements of what makes an exceptional founder have changed. I think where we may have seen in our recent investments over the last few years relative to 5, 10 years ago, a bit of a shift is more around the background. And I think increasingly we're seeing more and more founders that are deeply technical, whether, a masters in AI and a PhD from MIT, like these sorts of backgrounds that are, paired with often a, strong person on the operational side or business side. But just seeing a lot more technical founding teams, both for, of course, the AI research labs and, and the like, but even for applied AI, just seeing far more technical founders than we have in the past, which then, as you evaluate companies that may not have that are competing with those that do, to Kristen's point around long-term defensibility and moats, like, just feels like the advantage that you can build if you are starting with, the best technical talent you can find versus, 2 non-technical co-founders who are going to hire some great AI engineers over time. Like, you'll just see that reflected in the quality of the products that they build and the core IP that they're building. And that's probably the biggest change that we've seen over the last few years, is just the rise of the truly, deeply technical founder.
I'm with Annie in that I don't think the core traits of what makes a founder successful is really changed that much. But maybe the one heuristic that we focus more on now, just given how fast things are moving in AI, is really indexing and watching on how quickly teams and founders are shipping new products and features, just as a proxy for quality of company, speed of execution, things like that. And then there's obviously some balance between getting things fully right for production versus shipping too early. But I think just how fast the space is moving, how much more I think customers are paying attention to different products in the market because of more competition. I just think like speed of a product and velocity of new features is even more important.
What about you, Kristen?
Yeah, the one addition to that I'd add is just what's that founder's unique insight into the opportunity in the market and the pain point and the problem that they're solving. Because again, if everyone's able to build products quickly and able to address the market, if it's too obvious or that there's no kind of unique insight, it's going to be hard to gain that edge.
When you guys think about the sort of sectors you're looking at, AI, as you said, I think at the very beginning, Annie, it's just investing at this point, right? When you sort of think about sectors where you think AI is poised to make a really big impact or that you're personally excited about, what comes to mind immediately? I was looking right at you, Kristen. You read my mind.
I think, just an overarching general statement. I think that there's, companies that are addressing at this massive inflection point. I agree with Karthik's earlier statement around just speed of execution and speed of decision making and speed of learning is absolutely key. The other thing I'd point to is just founders that see the world as it could be, but also take the time to understand why it is the way it is. And so when you're addressing, whether it's a new potential customer or a new use case, really understanding how that entity, how that enterprise is going to change based on their product, because this change management is hard for a lot of these companies and these potential customers. And so just because you see the world as it should be doesn't mean that everyone already sees that future. And so bringing people along in that change management and understanding people's different incentives, companies' different incentives, and an ecosystem and an industry or verticals different incentives is pretty key to making sure that your product is going to drive adoption, but also that your business model is going to not just deliver value, but capture value.
What about for you, Annie, Karthik?
I would just say one area I've been spending a lot of my time, and I know Kristen spends time as well, is in healthcare. I just think the opportunity for AI to solve problems that felt intractable for many, many years, or there have been, false promises based on more limited technology. I think it feels like the time is now in terms of like actually being able to make inroads on those. And one of the reasons I think I'm so excited about applied AI in healthcare relative to some other verticals too is just given labor shortages. I think a lot of people, there's a lot of talk around labor displacement and AI, taking jobs and what will that mean for people. That's an interesting conversation to have. But I think one area, healthcare to me is a very exciting space to deploy AI sooner because it is less oh no, what will all of these people that were doing this, really, really messy, gnarly, very hands-on process going to do now that AI is able to do it? We have had such a labor shortage on clinicians, nurses, and the like in healthcare for so long that it's less these workers will be displaced and will no longer have jobs, and more, oh wow, they can actually tackle, they've been over capacity and now they can actually do their job without the risk of burnout or feeling like they have to work late into the evening and overtime and things like that. So I'm excited because it feels like a win-win where it's not AI instead of labor. It's more AI accelerating and giving leverage to the labor that we have. And also just the ability to solve problems that, there's so much of the messy data, unstructured data in healthcare that has been impossible to get in a format that computers can then process and take action on. And that feels possible now. So overall, lots of elements there, but very excited about some of the companies we've been seeing in healthcare.
What about you, Karthik?
Yeah, Ali, I mean, there's so much to be excited about. It's hard to pick a few things, but like in the past 6 or 9 months, we've been spending more and more time in different vertical applications of AI. Healthcare is a big one. Annie and Kristen are super smart there. And then just in general, like the oldest, most boring mainline industries that are really important and backbones of our economy here are sort of finally now getting digitized in a really interesting way. And in some of these vertical areas, like these are usually founders who have either worked in these end markets before or have a very deep pain point, and have spent a lot of time thinking about how to reinvent the process. And building kind of like deep workflows, the right types of integrations. And so there's like so much interesting stuff. Like, I don't know, one example, if you just take like construction, for example, like obviously massive market. The vast majority of construction projects are massively over delayed. And so if you can use automation to speed up construction management, permitting, other things like that, like that's a huge improvement in some of these massive high spend projects. And then even in the design phase, like, can we finally now have AI to like use AI to build like a next generation, like Autodesk that can create like a Figma-like experience for construction instead of having to like build in like a 20, 30-year-old clunky piece of software. Like maybe like that's super cool. Insurance. I think Evan's got a couple of investments in the insurance category, but like there's so much going on there across different areas, right? Like top of funnel, like most insurance companies actually have more inbound volume that they can handle, which is a good problem to have. But actually sifting through each potential new customer is a lot of work because you have to look through a bunch of data sources and figuring out if a customer is, a good customer or not. And so if you can take a bunch of unstructured data with AI and figure that out, that's great. And then you could also use AI, the decisioning process, to like actually reduce your the amount of claims you pay out. And then in internal operations as well, right? Like insurance, like there's so much manual workflows, there's so much compliance you have to do. It's just tons of paperwork essentially. And there's a lot of interesting automation going on there. So like those are like two random examples, but I could talk for like days about like home services or e-commerce or a bunch of other stuff. So yeah.
Well, the thing I love about a lot of these is that they are these entrenched, long-standing industries with a lot of different moving parts in the physical world and a lot of stakeholders. Like construction has quite a few stakeholders, and healthcare has an incredibly long string of stakeholders. I guess one of the things that I wonder about is as you sort of look at possibilities of innovation, like I actually do think the Figma-like platform, for example, is really exciting for construction, or I think AI transcription technology for doctors already seems like it's proving to be transformative. How do you sort of, when you look at those use cases in those industries, particularly that have such roots in the physical world, how do you figure out what is going to stick and what's not? And does it just go back to the customers, or is there something else? Is it conversations you have with the founders? How do you know that there's at least the possibility of something being really sticky?
I think it comes down to user value and business value. So are they able to, transform the way that a particular user is doing his or her job, or able to drive, as Annie mentioned, can they 3x, 4x, maybe even 10x more efficiently do their job? But then in particular, it's, the idea of kind of waiting for long-term potential efficiency gains is not what's going to make something sticky. It's hard ROI and it's much faster time to value that's going to make something truly stick.
What about for you, Karthik?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Kristen said. And then in some of these more vertical end markets, we spend a lot of time thinking about what's the right wedge to start with. I think pretty much every successful vertical SaaS company has become multi-product, and they eventually sell 4, 5, 6 different products to their customers. But you have to start with one. And if there's going to be competition in every vertical, I think over time, a lot of companies will converge and compete. But like, what is the right first product to sell that earns you the right to build that multi-product journey? That's honestly what we spend a lot of thinking about. And that like first problem or the first product has to be like one of the core pain points for your customer. It's got to require a lot of manual workflows. You probably have a huge in-house operations team or beta team that's working on this. And by if you're able to use, some sort of automation, it gives that in-house team a lot more leverage to focus on higher value tasks that are honestly just more important for the business. So we look for like what's really giving leverage to folks inside the organization, not just like 1 or 2 people, but like, teams of like 100 or 1,000 people, because that like enables a step change level in like productivity for the entire organization. And then, yeah, just like, honestly, just how much deeper and deeper can you get into workflow? Like how much do you integrate into like all of your into your customers' other important systems of record? Cause that just makes your product, and more sticky. And these are like real product engineering efforts. So like, we like that. We know it doesn't happen overnight, but, it takes time to build. And like on the converse side of that, like it also takes time to, replace. And so it makes things more sticky.
Well, it goes back to that point you made earlier about if it's really hard to take this out of your system and it will actually create a problem, then there's evidence of some of that stickiness. What about for you, Annie?
I think agree with a lot of what's been shared. There's been a lot of talk about workflows and how you can become embedded in the workflow, which I think is truly how you build the stickiness over time. But I think another question with that we grapple with is how can you get in a way, particularly in industries like healthcare or industrials or these spaces where people have been doing things the same way for so long and are not necessarily the most tech savvy and forward leaning, like the developers who are excited to try every new tool. So the other question we think about is, how can you get deeply embedded in the workflow, but how can you also get in without changing the workflow at all? Because that's another key to say, rather than showing up to your customer and saying, here's a new portal or here's a new tool, let us train you on this tool. And because it's better, you will use it instead of what you were using before. We've seen companies that have gotten in and gotten into production more quickly, doing so by saying, you actually don't have to change anything at all, or all you have to do is press this button and then it just works out of the box. And so for end users where that may be a barrier to getting them started, that's been something that we've thought a lot about is, how quickly can you get value and how can you do so without a major ask on the part of your customers?
Velocity matters.
Yeah,
So-
both in getting started and then also, shipping on the customer side.
What role does the visual world, visual AI, play in the calculations that you're making right now?
Yeah, I'll just give a couple examples. I've made a number of visual AI investments in healthcare around diagnostics. One of the ones more recently at a company called Vidya AI, a dental AI imaging company, and invested actually way back in the seed when I was on the operating side. One of the key things that's interesting about dental, which is at sleepy $170 billion industry, is that over 80% of the dollars flowing through dental insurance are imaging driven. And so based on imaging diagnostic. And so if you can embed AI into that upfront imaging, it can drive so much value and so much efficiency, not only for the workflow on the dental side, but on the dentist, but also for the patient and the potential insurer as well. And so these are, there's so many opportunities for AI that are imaging driven, and then hopefully eventually multimodal, because I think that's the next phase that we're seeing, to drive a ton of value for users, for consumers, and for companies.
Dental offices, another area that maybe hasn't seen
A ton of change,
as much innovation as there could have been.
Yeah.
You were smiling, Karthik, so I'm picking on you.
Sure. Well, I mean, credit and respect to Evan and the whole LDV team for being so early to this trend. If you boil down this AI platform shift to its most simplest form, it's actually just taking visual materials, documents, audio, video, and unstructured data and making it legible and transformable, which is I think that's sort of the underpinning of basically all the trends we've been talking about in this conversation. Taking super complex, manual, inefficient, internal and external workflows, and speeding them up. And at the end of the day, giving employees, teams at companies just more leverage on their time and in their careers, which is super, which is really exciting. So, we were relatively early investors in UiPath as an example, and so we saw sort of RPA as a category explode in the past decade. But it feels like just that that's fundamentally taking visual data, like documents, unstructured text, and creating processing and automation around that. It feels like the market opportunities now is even 5 or 10x of kind of RPA, because now any business user can do it. Doesn't have to be a technical user, doesn't have to be an implementation team. Any user in an organization can do it. And then any function as well, across customer support, or internal finance, or legal, or procurement. So the TAM, if you will, is infinite.
Well, and to your point, I think one of the most underrated things in the world is how much information we process with our eyes on a daily basis. And so it makes sense that the TAM accordingly, if there's more we can process, it becomes infinite. What about you, Annie?
Yeah, I mean, I think LDV's thesis was ahead of its time in a way to be focused here, and now they get the benefit of kind of visual technology as kind of everything, given that humans process information visually, even when we talk about other mediums like written text. Often the written text we're now interpreting is a result of what was previously a visual input. It's just, if it's a a doctor saying, I see a patient, I interpret what I'm seeing visually, and then I write down in their note what's going on with them. That becomes, written text. But ultimately, the ability to process information visually just allows you to go straight to the source. It's like we don't have to go through the next step of someone interpreting that, writing it down, and then reinterpreting that text into another format. The visual capability allows us to say, oh, actually, we could just capture the truth, with a camera or what have you. So it's pretty exciting, and I think by virtue of that, feel like visual technology increasingly is kind of like almost like AI has become investing. It's like visual technology is kind of like core of everything, especially as we move to a world of virtual AI glasses and things that we think are on the come over the coming years.
I like the phrase capture the truth quite a bit. One of the things that we talked about a little bit in our prep call was AI lowering barriers in creative industries that are fundamentally visual, like gaming, media. How do you all see the future of content creation kind of in this sort of new world?
It's exploding. More content than ever, of high value and low value. I think one of the things I've been thinking about as it relates to content creation is the bar to become a content creator has never been lower. Like I can today on my computer create a video, create a podcast, design apparel, like all of these things, write a book, all of these things that a few years ago I would not think of myself as someone that is, capable of doing so. That doesn't mean it's going to be good, right? So I think there will be a lot more content that is created because anyone can create really any type of content very quickly. But I think there will be more value in the best of the best, the like truly exceptional artists versus the, me prompting Mid-Journey to create an image. So it's both, there will be much, much more content than ever before, but I also think the highest value content will continue to separate from the rest.
What about you, Karthik? I know you were excited about this.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like this is an area where I have trouble even fathoming what the world's going to look like in 5 to 10 years, because so much is changing and we're still only in the early innings of kind of this explosion of content creation. I guess my most relevant vantage point is we've had a long history of gaming here at IDP, spending I think over 15 years ago now, and so we spend a lot of time in gaming, and we're already seeing like early signs of this, but in a world where personalization is truly like fully accessible to all, like how that just changes consumer behavior, right? And I sort of always look to what the younger generations are doing and how they're spending their time, because they usually know what's up. And I mean, if you look at today, if you look at kids and teenagers and all the time they spend on Roblox and Fortnite and other platforms, and the money they spend, it's on like buying cosmetic skins and costumes and things like that as a form of personalization to express themselves. But in a couple of years from now, like these, people, anyone can like literally create like entire games from scratch, like entire experiences that are truly based on like whatever we want, and we can invite our friends to play in them. And like that's pretty amazing. Like to create like from scratch like an entire sort of like consumable experience, audio, video, like high fidelity content. That's gonna be pretty amazing. So I think there's like the world of honestly gaming and just consumer time spent is gonna change so much. And then as a sort of tangential one, just like sort of related, but just like education, like sort of, our education system today is very much taking blocks of content and aligning it to students regardless of where they are in their individual academic journey. But if we can do like personalized gamified learning for people at different age groups and people with disabilities and other problems, like that's just going to be so amazing. And I hope that's a much better world.
I can tell you're genuinely excited about it. No, I think we all, I think most people remember the first time they saw a teenager or a kid on Roblox. And I know as a millennial, my mind was blown. I was like, this world isn't for me anymore. I don't know what's happening. So to your point, I don't think we know what will happen. Any thoughts, Kristen?
I very distinctly remember when I was building a company at the seed stage, the office next door was Roblox. And this was many years ago. And I remember thinking, what is this game where people are going to be building their own worlds and set? And I had a 2 and a 3.5-year-old at the time. And I was like, I don't know if they're going to like this. And lo and behold, they're avid Roblox users, and that company is, is astronomical and incredible. So, if it's just amazing to see what can become in such a short period of time.
All right, we're going to start to wrap with, I think, the most unanimously agreed upon essential question across venture capital right now. And it is a bit of an unfair question, maybe, because I don't know if anyone definitively has the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Annie, Karthik, and Kristen, where will value accrue in AI over the long term? Everyone's like, do we have to? Annie, you're laughing the most, so I'm going to put you on the spot.
I think we believe there will be value that accrues at every level. I think there's been a lot of debate about foundation model versus application layer and things like that. I think what we're seeing today feels like a real platform shift. The first since mobile in terms of like real, genuine, like massive opportunity, things being done in a different way. And so maybe a bit of a cop-out answer, but I think in that world where everything is changing and up for grabs, there will be massive businesses built at every layer. I think bringing it back to KP and where we've been focused, I would say we've been investing most heavily at the application layer. A lot of the themes that we've been talking about, vertical AI and app layer. But I do think, fast forward 10, 15 years, there will be many, many massively large companies that have been started during this period, just given we're in a platform shift.
So the floor is lava. The ground is moving.
The floor is lava, indeed, and it's an exciting time.
What about you, Karthik?
Really similar, Rita, Annie. Actually, like if this is a platform shift, like we all believe it is, and we're seeing it on the ground, I think it's sort of every layer or part of the market, there will be big iconic companies built. I have no doubt of that. At IDP, most of our investments and activity in AI have also been at the application layer, both sort of horizontal companies and vertical companies like in a bridge in healthcare, sort of to the use case of Ali you were talking to before. But yeah, I mean, like there's going to be 20, 30, 50 generational companies built in AI across many different use cases. So there's plenty to do.
Kristen, bring us home. You get the final word.
Yeah, I agree. At BAM Cornerpoint, we focus on early growth enterprise technology companies. So companies that have found that early product market fit and are looking to scale, and so much opportunity for them to capture value, but also to build their own companies in a different way. And I've even seen how we're building our venture capital firm in leveraging data and applied AI internally, as well as deploying it for portfolio impact. And we're seeing companies themselves build and evolve in a much different, much more efficient and human capital efficient way than in the past. So really excited about the future and the platform shift. The one other area I'd say is we are, investing not only across horizontal, but vertical applications. We're seeing somewhat of a collapse between application layer and infrastructure layer, and how companies are building their data infrastructure strategies is absolutely key to the types of applications that they can build going forward and the defensibility of those. So really thrilled to be in this industry at this exact time.
That's all the time we have. Thank you all so much. It's been a pleasure.